Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Spotlight Sessions. I'm the host, Ilan Fisher, and I'm really honored and privileged to have here with me Gina Adams, the CEO of Wareologie. And just a bit of a spoiler, I'm wearing a shirt in this episode, and I think that's something very apt because it has something to do with Gina's day to day. So, Gina, tell us about yourself. Tell us about Gina.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much. I'm Gina Adams, the founder of Wareologie. We develop hardware to restore levels of independence and empower anyone facing physical challenges with independence and empowerment to feel their best. So we launched in 2019 with our first proprietary invention, the Buttons Magnetic Adapters. And now we are developing a pipeline of assistive devices that help people carry out essential activities of daily living.
And are you able to share with us and the listeners a little bit more about what that pipeline looks like?
Yeah, the first inspiration was after witnessing the devastating impact of Parkinson's on my dad and understanding how there's a ripple effect when people lose their physical ability and how that impacts one emotionally. And of course, caregivers like my mom, who spent anywhere from 15 to 30 hours a week tending for a loved one, that dynamic, right, in the relationship changes. And so we started researching and conducted over 300 customer discovery interviews. I assumed that I wasn't the only one witnessing this. And as it turns out, the disabled community, I believe, has so much to offer, and yet there are simple things that are barriers to them carrying out and living life to the fullest. And so our first invention are buttons to buttons. So the name comes from, we're based in Metro Detroit. And so if anybody has ever heard of the White Stripes, there's a song out there called Hardest Button to Button. So it seemed apropos from us being from Detroit. But the idea is that these are like your shirt, right? You can take a button-up shirt and retrofit them on your own buttons. And I have a little sample here so you can see. You just put one part on the button hole and the other part clips over the existing button. And so it magnetically closes and opens. It makes dressing effortless and easy. This proprietary patented device was, again, developed out of just an observation and knowing that people like my dad had accumulated a closet of shirts over his lifetime that expressed his unique style. And so why wouldn't we come up with something? I feel like this is sustainable, of course. So instead of having to go out and buy new wardrobe and new clothes, he can just continue wearing the shirts that express his unique individual style. Do you have any questions about that?
That first of all, I just want to say that's really amazing because when you were describing that story and that journey you've gone through, it reminded me of my grandfather, and my grandfather had Parkinson's, and watching him kind of get dressed was something that it had an imprint on me from when I was a young child. So to see that there's now technology that's able to assist with that and make that just that little bit easier is something that's really powerful. So thank you for sharing and thank you for being a part of this.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in what your day-to-day looks like, because it looks like there's a personal element to this, there's a business element to this, but what does your day-to-day look like when you're just really trying to achieve your mission?
Through that initial research, it really opened the door to a whole line of opportunities to develop products that help people, but maybe have a universal style appeal. So our day to day, I was kind of explaining, you have, your business and your operations, you have your product development, and then you of course have your third piece, which is marketing and sales. And so my day to day is spent kind of juggling those three items. Last year, we were researching how people with disabilities were disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. And we stepped up to a call to action by a senior living center who needed to administer therapy to their patients that were in isolation. And we started looking into how big a problem that is. And There's 283 million surgeries conducted globally every year. And when people don't have access to therapy and they are basically in bed, immobility leads to really awful health issues such as muscle atrophy, congestion, which can then lead to pneumonia. So our latest development is a portable parallel bars that are for occupational therapists, physical therapists, so that you can actually close the device into a suitcase on wheels, essentially, and roll it in from patient to patient. This not only maximizes the clinician's time spent administering physical therapy, it maximizes that time with the patient, because as we know, when you have to transfer somebody from bed into a wheelchair and then take them down to a physical rehab lab, there's sometimes the patient exhausts so much energy just in that transportation that they have nothing left for the actual therapy. So we're really excited about this particular new development that we're working on. And I would just like to say that I think we take it step by step, right? You have to look at what is the problem, how big is that need, and then we move forward pretty cautiously by conducting lots of different interviews with clinicians and users, caregivers, to see really if it's the right solution. So right now we're embarked in a user experience research and development with the Veterans Health Administration, which is it's like the largest health organization here in the United States. I would probably guess probably in the world. So we're really fortunate to be selected as an outside public sector company to work with the VA to improve patient outcomes for both veterans as well as in the public sector for this skilled nursing space and senior living that we're looking at.
Wow, so that's really a fortune that you're working on in terms of product development, user experience, doing interviews like this. How big is your team?
Our team, our immediate team is pretty small. There's 4 of us. And then I depend a lot on expert consultants in engineering and the design part of it. We have over 20 different consultants that we work with to help keep the ball rolling.
Amazing. And Gina, you speak a lot about really different, wide-ranging subjects from your personal to your professional to the connections that you've been making. What does accessibility mean to you?
Well, accessibility is one's ability to carry out life to the fullest. They should be able to, have conversations, read their email. Accessibility, as I've learned, again, my background is in the apparel industry. I am not a clinician by trade, and so it's been a huge learning curve for me to be able to even answer your question. But there's invisible.
And just to say, likewise, I'm still learning myself and learning every day and rounding out what I think it is as well.
Yeah, I certainly had perhaps my own prejudices or stereotypes going into this research. And at the end of the day, I realize I've met so many people, whether they have an invisible disability. So sometimes like someone may have arthritis and it's not so obvious to the naked eye because they just simply can't pinch, or they can't, to the extreme where one of my brand ambassadors, he's an amazing man, his name's James Murtha, and he suffered a catastrophic mountain bike accident at the age of 28 and now lives independently with quadriplegia. And so there's a huge, obviously, array of disabilities. And so in terms of accessibility, how do we take these different diseases or illnesses or accidents, and each one has its own challenges, right? And so that's where buttons to buttons, magnetic adapters, I thought fell into the interesting solution, because neuropathy or dexterity challenges is a common symptom of numerous illnesses. And so we were trying to address one issue is let's help people dress independently. We know that personal care activities are really something that people want to carry out independently. So when we talk about accessibility, are there things that we can do to help people brush their teeth, or clip their toenails. Again, these are just things that we usually don't think about because able-bodied individuals like you and I take it for granted. But even just the internet, my eyes, as I'm aging, my eyes are going bad. And then I also tend to think about people who are visually impaired, and little things that we can do to websites. Like right now we're doing an overhaul on our website to make sure that it's accessible, but we're choosing the right colors. And so there's, and it's, size and all of that comes into play. So it's every day is a learning experience for sure.
And I love what you said there, because it touches on a few things that I always think about. I think that accessibility, and also when you talk about disability, it's something that's very intersectional. As you are aging, you're more likely to have certain disabilities, and as well as accidents or certain things that can happen in your life that can affect that. So when we're thinking about catering, it's thinking about your day to day and the usability of your life and your daily processes. That's what I think of every day. And I think it's designing for every type of individual and being cognizant of that individual. And Gina, really, if you had a message to other business owners to cater more for your community, the community that you're looking to serve, what would that be? What kind of provisions would you ask them to provide?
I would definitely invite them to the table, them as in people that you can't design unless you understand that person well. And so we've been very fortunate with some of our development partners in getting that user experience, because I have no intention or desire to develop products that don't fit and serve a huge need. First of all, it's incredibly expensive to develop consumer products. And secondly, I'm doing this out of a passion and perseverance to help the greater good. And I think that by inviting people that you are designing for and making sure that whether it's the size of a component or just, you got to have people involved in that design process to ensure that you're designing and developing for incredible function and performance.
Amazing. And I think that's something that's really universal advice, because in my frame of work, we're talking about websites. So it's always about inviting everybody to the table to see how we can best optimize a website for an individual.
Yeah.
And likewise with you, when you're talking about physical accessibility, it's the same story. And Gina, just my last question is, if you could have a conversation with anybody in the world, who would it be and why?
Oh my gosh, that is a loaded question. Who and why?
Yeah.
I don't want to sound cliche, but Mahatma Gandhi would probably be one of my key people, just because he was able to make such unimaginable change for good, and he did it peacefully. And not that it was all peaceful, but his approach was peaceful, and it was really to help an incredibly underserved demographic and bring equality. And I believe all human life has value, and it's somebody that I've always really admired and respected.
I love that message, and I think it's a really great way to close this show and this episode. Gina, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you and learning more. I know in our discussions, otherwise, I've come out with a lot of different perspectives, but I think this has been our most interesting conversation yet. And thanks again for coming.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to meet your members. Thanks a lot.
All right. Cheers. Thank you all. Bye.